I wasn't expecting anyone that morning. I was still in my robe sipping lukewarm coffee by the kitchen window when the doorbell rang. It was early, too early for deliveries or neighbors. When I opened the door, Delilah stood there, pale and trembling. Her 3 children clustered behind her like shadows. "Mom," she said, her voice cracking. I didn't know where else to go. Her eyes were red face, blotchy. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The kids, Carson, Maisie, and little Finn, stood with their backpacks and a plastic bin of toys. Carson, the oldest at 10, kept glancing at the street like he expected someone to follow them. Maisie held her mother's coat sleeve tightly, and Finn's thumb was in his mouth, eyes wide and unsure. "Come in," I said, stepping aside, trying to sound steady, even as something in my chest pulled tight. Delilah collapsed onto the couch the moment we walked inside. The kids sat quietly on the rug. I brought her a glass of water and waited. She didn't cry, not immediately. She just stared at the floor and shook her head like she couldn't believe she was here. He said, "I'm impossible to live with," she whispered. "That I don't know how to be happy, that I suck the air out of every room." I sat beside her, placing a hand on her back. She folded in on herself and began sobbing. Between ragged breaths, she told me Kevin had been distant for months, that he was gaslighting her, calling her unstable, making her feel like she was the problem. He said if I left, he'd keep the kids, she said. That no judge would side with me unless I had a stable place to go. I looked at the children, quiet and still in their spots on the rug. They didn't know what any of this meant yet, but they knew enough to be scared. "Just for a few weeks," Delilah said softly. "Just until I figure things out." I nodded slowly. I didn't ask questions. I didn't set conditions. I only got up, opened the linen closet, and started pulling out the extra sheets. At first, it felt good to have the house full again. The quiet I'd come to associate with peace suddenly seemed lonely by comparison. The sound of Maisie's giggles in the hallway, Carson practicing his spelling at the kitchen table, Finn humming to himself as he followed me room to room. It stirred something I thought I'd buried years ago. A sense of purpose, of being needed. Delilah was helpful in the beginning. She offered to cook cleaned without being asked and folded laundry like it was an act of gratitude. I caught myself smiling more even when the days were long. She said thank you, and the kids hugged me each night before bed. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that this was temporary. The first piece of mail with her name on it arrived a few weeks in. I found it on the console table, an envelope from her lawyer. I didn't think much of it until I noticed the return address on the next one was the post office. She'd submitted a change of address form. Nothing formal, nothing discussed. She just redirected her mail like it was assumed. I said nothing. Instead, I tucked the envelopes into a neat stack and left them on the kitchen counter. The guest room, too, began to change. The neutral bedding I'd picked was replaced by floral sheets and bold throw pillows. A new bookshelf appeared one morning, then a rug. She didn't ask, just moved it in. The kids needed somewhere soft to sit, she said, brushing past me like it was no big deal. Carson started calling it our room. Finn told a neighbor, "We live here now. I heard Maisie ask if we could paint the walls pink." I laughed, gently deflecting, but inside, something pulled tight. There was still no mention of apartments or timelines. When I brought it up gently over tea one night, Delilah's mouth tightened. "It's just not the right time," she said. "Everything's still up in the air." So I nodded again and sipped my tea, pretending I didn't feel the floor slowly shifting under me. I called Judith the next morning. I don't know what I expected. Maybe understanding, maybe advice. But the second I mentioned feeling overwhelmed, her tone shifted. "She's your daughter, Evie," she said flatly. "What are you going to do, throw her out on the street?" I wasn't suggesting anything drastic. I told her about the mail, the redecoration, the way the kids were settling in like this was permanent. I tried to explain that I hadn't even been asked, it had all just started happening. But Judith cut me off. Honestly, you sound ungrateful. Some people would give anything to have their family close. Her words hit harder than I expected. Judith had always been like this, sharp-tongued, quick to judgment. Still, I felt small, like I was 12 again, standing in the kitchen of our childhood home, being scolded for wanting time to myself, while our mother lay in bed and expected me to take care of everything. "You're the oldest," Mom used to say. You know what that means. It meant staying home while Judith went to summer camp. It meant cooking dinner when I was 14 because Mom needed a break. It meant silence when I wanted to scream. Responsibility packaged as love. I learned early that saying no made me selfish, and selfishness was the greatest sin in our family. Judith's voice brought me back. Delilah needs you right now. Don't make this about you. I hung up. Soon after, muttering something about laundry. The rest of the day passed in a fog. I folded clothes that weren't mine, picked up Legos from the hallway, made dinner for 5 and didn't eat much myself. The house echoed with laughter, cartoons, and the gentle clatter of a life being built on top of mine. That night, as I wiped crumbs from the kitchen counter, Delilah walked in holding her laptop. I need to upload some documents for court. Do you mind if I use your desk? I nodded, stepping aside. She didn't wait for a full answer before settling into my chair. It was a Tuesday morning when it happened. I had gone to the grocery store early, hoping to beat the crowds and get back before the kids finished their cereal. The list was short: milk, bananas, sandwich bread, but I lingered anyway, pretending I had more to do than I did. It felt good to be out, to move through the quiet aisles, to be just Evelyn, not Mom, not Grandma, not landlady, to my own daughter. When I pulled into the driveway, something looked off. The storm door was propped open with a backpack, and the blinds on the living room window had been tilted differently. I didn't think much of it until I reached for my key and slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again, jiggling slightly, then pulled it out and stared at it as if the problem lay with me. I knocked. Twice. Then a third time, louder. Delilah opened the door with a casual smile, her phone in one hand. "Oh, hey," she said, as if we'd run into each other at the market. "You're back early." I held up the grocery bag. "The lock isn't working." "Oh," she said, brushing past me to grab the milk. "Yeah." I had it changed. I followed her in, heart pounding. "You what?" "It's for safety," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Kevin's lawyer knows where we're staying now. If he tries anything, CPS might get involved. They need to see that this is a secure, stable environment for the kids." I stood frozen in the hallway, one hand still gripping the empty grocery bag. "You changed the locks without telling me. It's still your house, Mom," she said lightly. "Relax. I just needed to make sure we were protected." "It's not a big deal," but it was. It was a very big deal. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the new deadbolt, that polished brass circle gleaming like a badge of authority I no longer had. My own key was useless now. She walked into the kitchen, humming. I stood alone by the door, the cold from outside still clinging to my coat. Upstairs, I could hear Maisie singing to herself, calling it our house again. I didn't correct her. I didn't trust my voice to hold steady. I waited until the kids were in bed that night to say something. Delilah was folding laundry on the couch, humming softly. I sat across from her, trying to keep my tone even. "You should have told me about the lock," I said quietly. She paused, eyes on a tiny sock in her hands. "I didn't think it was a big deal. It's my house." Her expression shifted. Surprise, then hurt. "I thought you wanted us to feel safe here." "I do, but I also want to be able to use my own front door." She sighed, setting the laundry aside. "This is about more than the door, isn't it?" I nodded. "It's about everything. I feel like I'm being pushed out of my own life." Delilah's eyes welled. So you want us to leave? You want the kids to be uprooted again, after everything they've been through?" Her voice cracked. I knew it. I knew this was too good to last. "That's not what I said." "No, but it's what you meant." She stood up, brushing past me with her armful of clothes. I sat there stunned by how quickly the conversation had turned into an accusation. I hadn't said I didn't want them. I hadn't even asked for a timeline. I had asked for respect, and somehow that made me the villain. The next morning, Maisie wouldn't meet my eyes at breakfast. Carson muttered something about people who don't want us here. Even little Finn, usually glued to my hip, stuck close to his mother all day. I hadn't realized how fast a story could spread in such a small house. I started taking my morning coffee out to the porch, even when it was too cold to enjoy. I canceled lunch plans with friends. I stopped answering phone calls. The house felt full, but I had never felt more alone inside it. A week later, I came home to find my guest room bookshelf gone, replaced with a larger white one Delilah must have ordered. It barely fit the wall. She was baking muffins. The kids were dancing in socks on the tile floor. And no one noticed I didn't smile back. It was Mrs. Klein who let it slip. We were chatting over the fence while I watered the hydrangeas, making polite small talk about the weather, when she smiled and said, "I think it's just wonderful your grandchildren are going to Ridgewood Elementary now. That's a great district." I paused mid-pour. "What? Oh, Delilah mentioned it last week," she went on. "She said the school was just a 10-minute walk. So convenient." I nodded slowly, heart beginning to tap faster. I hadn't even known she was enrolling them. Ridgewood was zoned for our address. She must have used it my name, my house, as her official residence. That evening, I checked the mail. Alongside the usual flyers was a welcome packet from the school district, addressed to the Sampson family. My name was nowhere on it. Just hers. Just them. I didn't ask her about it. Not right away. Instead, I started looking closer. At receipts left on the counter. At browser tabs left open on my computer when she borrowed it. One night, while putting away laundry she'd left in the dryer, I noticed a printed bank statement sticking out from her folder. It wasn't from our shared account, the one she had told me she barely used now. It was from a credit union across town. And the balance wasn't what I expected. It wasn't near empty. It was over $7,000. When I confronted her, she shrugged. "It's for the kids. Emergencies. You told me you had nothing," I said, my voice shaking. "I said I didn't have enough for rent. And I don't. Not with everything going on." I went quiet after that. But I started keeping a journal, small, leather-bound, tucked into my nightstand. Dates, conversations, changes in the house. I printed email receipts. Took photos of rooms that no longer looked like mine. A part of me felt ashamed, but a louder part, one that had been pushed to the edge, knew I needed to protect myself. Later that week, I found a letter from the community center, thanking Delilah for registering her household for the spring programs. My name again was nowhere on it. I sat across from the lawyer, clutching a folder stuffed with notes, photos, and copies of the mail Delilah had redirected. Her office was small but clean-lined with legal books and framed diplomas. She was kind, mid-40s, the sort of woman who looked like she took no nonsense from anyone. After I laid everything out, she skimmed through the pages with a furrowed brow. "You've documented well," she said, "but I won't lie to you, this won't be easy." "She's my daughter," I said, not quite able to look her in the eye. "But she's not who she was. Family or not," she said. Setting the folder down, "She's established residency. And since she has children, any eviction could be contested on grounds of hardship. Judges are hesitant to remove single mothers with kids from stable housing, especially if there's no formal lease. You'd be seen as the one disrupting the children's environment." I sat back, trying to absorb that. "So I have no rights in my own house?" "You do," she said, "but enforcing them will take time. money, patience. And she knows it. A few days later, Delilah said it out loud. "You really want to evict me? Go ahead. See what happens. I'll call CPS. Tell them you're unstable, that the house is unsafe for the kids. They'll believe me. They always do." The way she said it, so calm, so sure, made my hands tremble. I stopped by the community center later that week, hoping for some neutral advice. I found Marie, a social worker I'd known for years, and asked her off the record what would happen if a complaint were made. Marie's voice softened. "Even if it's false, CPS is required to investigate. They'll come to your home, speak to the children, review the environment. It can be stressful, and yes, it can follow you." I thanked her and left with a pit growing in my stomach. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in my own home. From the hallway, I could hear Delilah laughing at something on her phone, carefree and loud as if none of it touched her at all. The next morning, I ordered cameras. Discreet, motion-triggered, nothing flashy. I posted the legal notice on the hallway corkboard common areas, only clearly labeled, just as my lawyer advised. Delilah barely looked up when I mentioned it. "You're acting paranoid," she muttered, and went back to her coffee. I changed the PIN on my bank account, called the utility companies, and had all bills routed through a secure login. No more shared passwords. No more quiet assumptions. The lock on my bedroom door stayed, and I bought a small safe for my important documents. The folder I'd once kept under the bed now had its own place. When I told my therapist everything, she was silent for a long time. "You're not abandoning her," she finally said. "You're re-establishing yourself." That word re-establishing settled into my chest like a stone and a balm at once. I had been eroded for months, bit by bit. But I hadn't disappeared. Not completely. With my lawyer's help, I drafted a letter. It wasn't angry. It was detailed, clear, calm. It laid out the timeline, the boundaries, the expectations. 60 days to vacate. No threats, no games. I offered to help with first month's rent once she found a place. Everything was in writing. A copy for her. A copy for me. A copy for the file we'd begun to build just in case. I printed it on cream stationery and left it on the kitchen table under a magnet shaped like a pear. That evening, she didn't mention it. She made pasta set plates for 5 and talked to the children like it was any other night. But I saw her glance at the letter. Once. Then again. I didn't say a word. I just cleared my dish, washed it, and went to bed. I gave her the final notice 1 week later. 30 days. No negotiations. No softening. My lawyer sent a formal copy by certified mail just to make it official. I handed her mine in the kitchen face to face. She didn't even read it. Just stared at the paper, then at me. "You're actually doing this?" she said. Her voice was low, bitter. "I am. You'd really rather live alone than help your daughter get through the worst year of her life I've helped," I said. "I gave everything I could. I'm done giving what's not mine to give." She slammed the notice on the counter, knocked over a cup, and stormed out of the room. The next 2 days were a cold war. She barely spoke. The kids were confused, quiet, careful. On the 4th morning, she woke me at dawn, already dressed her suitcase by the door. "Found a place." "It's not perfect, but it'll do." I nodded. "Let me know if you need help moving boxes." She didn't answer. Just zipped up Finn's coat, told Maisie to grab her stuffed rabbit, and motioned for Carson to carry the bags. When they stepped outside, she turned back one last time. Her face was unreadable. Then she leaned close, her voice so soft I almost missed it. "You'll regret this." I didn't answer. I watched as she buckled the kids into the back seat of a gray sedan I didn't recognize. Maybe a rental. Maybe borrowed. She didn't wave. I didn't expect her to. When the car pulled away, I closed the door gently behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just walked into the living room and sat down in the quiet. And for the first time in nearly a year, it stayed quiet. The quiet felt foreign at first. I kept expecting a door to slam upstairs or a bowl to clatter in the sink. For the first few days, I caught myself tiptoeing out of habit, as if someone might be napping in the next room. But no one was. The silence didn't ache the way I thought it would. It settled over the house like a warm blanket, strange but soft. I started small. Took down the rainbow drawings taped to the refrigerator and placed them gently in a drawer. I repainted the guest room a pale blue. New curtains, new sheets. Nothing extravagant, just mine. I spent mornings in the garden again, pruning the roses I'd neglected. The air felt lighter, the soil under my nails like old companionship. I called my book club back to life and hosted tea in the sunroom. We laughed too loud and stayed too long. I didn't apologize once. A week later, a manila envelope arrived in the mail. Inside were 3 crayon drawings, Maisie's Carsons and Finn's. No note from Delilah. Just the pictures. One showed a house with smoke curling from the chimney and a stick figure labeled Grandma Watering Flowers. I held it longer than I meant to. I pinned it to the fridge. Just that one. Some days still feel heavy. I miss the sound of little feet on the stairs. I miss Delilah as she used to be. But I don't miss the fear. I don't miss the pressure. The house is still quiet, but it breathes with me now. Every drawer opens without permission. Every corner is mine again. She changed the locks, but I changed the ending. And maybe that's what real motherhood looks like after all.